How you doing? It's Miles here again. It's day 38. Hope you're ready for today's lesson, because I know I am. When I was a youth pastor years ago, I used to take kids down to Mexico with bags of clothes, and we used to go to orphanages and these poor communities. And these kids were bringing their old shoes, their old dresses and old pants and whatever, stuff they didn't want anymore. And we would bring it down there, and these kids would literally run down the street that lived in Tijuana and grab the stuff out of the bag, and you would have thought it was Christmas. And the kids that I brought from California, their eyes were so big because they couldn't believe that the stuff they didn't want anymore could be so valuable to somebody else. But they were also blessed that things they had could be a blessing to someone else. Take a minute to relax and get focused on God, and let's dig into today's devotional. Today we're going to start by reading the next two verses of our scripture passage, Acts chapter 2, verse 44. It says, "Now all who believed were together and had all things in common, and sold their possessions and goods and divided them among all as anyone had need." What happened in the first century church, it was like a never-ending garage sale. Everybody was sharing what they had, and if people had need, they would just bless them. And God continued to bless them for being a blessing to each other. Many people collect stuff and things and material possessions to give them security and make them feel good and look cool. But one of the most radical changes God brings about in our lives is what He does to our priorities. God has a way of giving us hope and pleasure and joy that comes from the inside, not from the outside. God knows us inside and out and loves us just the way we are. He loved us so much that He let His Son die a horrible death so that you can be with Him forever and have a relationship with Him now. And when we really get this, suddenly things we once thought were so important are no longer important. We don't need stuff to make us okay anymore. God already says we're good to go. So what do you think it would take for God to convince you to loosen your grip on your stuff? What if you learned that all your valuables, your talents, your time, your material possessions had a different purpose, a purpose that was much bigger than the way you currently use them? What would you do if God showed you that He wanted to use your money and your stuff for something else? Would you be willing to let God repurpose them? Why or why not? Imagine you met someone who was really in need of God's love, and God put it on your heart to give that person something you own. What would you do? Of the stuff you own, what would be the hardest thing to share or give up, and why? If everybody you hung out with committed to sharing their stuff and helping each other, would you join in? What would you give up? What would you need from them in return? One last thing. God doesn't want to take away your stuff, but He sometimes asks you to contribute to a much bigger purpose than just your pleasure and your comfort. Living a generous life is one of the many ways we show God that we love and trust Him. And it's how we show His love to others.